Well, hello there, everyone. Bobby D here, your favorite Gala podcast auctioneer and host. Super excited for today's episode, and I think you are as well too. So thanks for joining us here on the Heart of the Gala podcast, where we're going to be talking about galas and fundraising and so many great things. I'm all about learning different perceptions when it comes to fundraising events. Definitely know my perception from the stage out, know my clients' perception, you, my nonprofit partners, your perception from behind the scenes. But now we're going to talk to a expert, a specialist, someone that goes to galas for a living. Like, how cool is that? Well, without further ado, let me introduce my guest all the way from the great state of Texas, the one and only Rob Giardinelli. Hey, Rob.
Hey, Bobby, and you got it right on the first try. Congratulations on the last
Yes.
name.
Yes. I got it. Awesome. Okay, so bio. I'm just going to go through this real quick. Rob's an expert in nonprofit galas, signature fundraising event space. That's our world. We love this. Over the past 13 years, has attended over 2,000 galas, cocktail parties, and events, raising over $250 million for top nonprofits throughout the world. He's a COO and senior social editor of a luxury lifestyle platform, Society Texas and Curated Texas. And prior to that, Rob spent 15 years in technology sales and brand strategy and so many things. He's also found the Dining for Dollars, which helps sales and entrepreneurs and nonprofit development leaders achieve their sales goals by being good hosts and good guests at galas. This is fantastic. Rob thrives in helping others achieve their sales and fundraising goals through entertaining, where he views it's the ideal way to showcase account, donor management, sales, and people in a fun, organic way. And that's what we're doing. We're making this happen, and we're going to just suck all this information out of your brain, if that's okay, Rob.
Sounds great. I'm game. Let's roll.
Awesome. Okay, so now, Rob, you give us a. I mean, wonderful bio, but give us kind of the layman's terms of like on a Saturday night, and you go to an event, like the who, what, when, where, why, all of that.
So, with what we do, we chronicle kind of the best of the best in Texas. So, most of the galas that we wind up covering, not every gala, but by and large, they raise $500,000 all the way up to, eight figures. So, some of them have raised even that much in a night. So, we really, our focus of our platform is to really celebrate on Society Texas and Curated Texas, is to really celebrate and elevate the good work people do. Because when you raise $500,000 or $10 million, you're able to really positively impact your community with your nonprofit in really big scalable numbers. And that's, really what we're all about showcasing and highlighting with the organizations that we've partnered with over the years. And, we're delighted to share and tell those stories because there's not really much of a marketplace for that. So we really like being able to, take that mantle for people.
Yeah, and you're right. There really isn't. I mean, besides some of the society pages and some of the newspapers, there's really not that space where you can, like, I love that, celebrate and elevate the events, and like, look, these are real dollars, going to real organizations, helping real people, and causes that are out there in the world. So, I mean, bravo to you for helping to create this.
Thank you.
I
It's
love
a
this.
real
Okay, so
passion. It's a real passion of mine. Absolutely.
I could tell, like, I can, from one event junkie to another event junkie, we can smell our own kind.
Exactly.
All right. So tell us about this past weekend's gala. Where were you? I mean, what did you see? What did you feel? What did you love?
So this weekend was a little quiet. I had gotten invited to a couple of things, but because Formula One was going on in Austin this past weekend, I decided to kind of give myself a weekend off. There was an event that I was invited to, and I actually went down and kind of took a little getaway to the Texas coast. But there is one event in Austin called Play Bingo, and it's for the Center for Child Protection. So it's like the
Okay.
one counter programming thing that goes on for 3 weeks in Austin between the beginning of Austin City Limits and the end of Formula One. So it's basically 1,000 people in a room and they play bingo for prizes. And basically they do thematic tables. So it's like all 10 people at a table are dressed in the same attire. So it's a hoot and a scream to be a
Oh
part
my
of.
God.
And I've been to it before. It's a lot of fun. But, it's one of those where I'm one of, literally the MC is male And if I go and if my husband goes, we're literally the only three males in the room. I mean, it is 1,000 women playing bingo on a Saturday morning, and it
Oh my
raises
God.
$1 million. I mean, it's an incredible event that really it's to me it's the perfect example of counter programming.
I
You
love
know,
that term, like counter programming, something that's outside of the norm. Like that's I
absolutely,
because I get so many,
absolutely, yeah.
conversations with clients or potential clients or even just in the industry. They're like, okay, well, do we always have to do the gala? And I'm like, no, there's so many different ways you can do it. Gala's just a word, like okay, now is it gala or gala?
It depends on where you are, and I'm not a snob about it one way or the other.
Okay.
So whatever people say, I am down for it.
Okay. All right. So, and I keep telling them, like, no, there's a lot of different ways. The gala is just the blank canvas that it is and gives some type of perception, but it's up to the nonprofit, it's up to their event planner, it's up to, that team that comes together to really design something that doesn't happen. I mean, and then that bingo sounds absolutely amazing.
It really is a one of a kind event. It's not something you expect because, and also, luncheons or those types of things usually
Yeah.
happen on a weekday, not on a Saturday. So I mean, it's just
Okay.
there's a lot of different things that and it's the Center for Child Protection, so it's one of the top children's charities in Austin that does that. So it's a really inventive way, and they've got a devoted following that they've spent years cultivating. That they're able to do that.
That's awesome. And okay, so event is just kind of that synonymous word within fundraising, is that it's a collection of people, whether virtual, which we learned about from years ago, but then now, coming back together in a very passionate way and then doing something with that event, whether it's, raising awareness, education, raising dollars, or maybe all of those. Like, what do you think is probably the, I guess, kind of that purpose, or kind of that mission that a gala can achieve for nonprofits? Like, why even spend all the time and the money and the energy and the stress and the heartache to plan one of these?
Because to me, it's the only organic way that I can think of where all your major donors can be in the room at the same time, and
Okay.
you're entertaining them instead of just pitching them money the whole time. That's why they're so invaluable to me. It gives the donors a chance to breathe, have a couple of cocktails, maybe spend $5,000 or $10,000 more in that live auction item because they've had two, three, four, or more cocktails. So to me, there is no better space for that. And I get why a lot of organizations don't want to do it, because one, it is a ton of work, and two, it's really intimidating, and three, a lot of people just don't know where to start. And it's those three things. I completely understand why it's not in the jam for a lot of organizations.
Right. Yeah, there's so many that are out there. I'm a member of the Association of Fundraising Professionals, and in like, especially when we're at Icon, our big national conference, you have those that are like all on board, like you and me. Events, yeah, these are great. It's a part of the tool, and then you have those that are like, ugh, special events. Why would you do anything like that? And there's a bit of event snobbery that's there, and I think that's because that kind of that school, or kind of that camp that's anti-event, is they maybe haven't done one right, or have seen one done effectively that can build that momentum for fundraising, that can start the conversations with new donors. And then I love that you entertain your major donors and then bring them together to create that electricity. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of the reasons that, some organizations don't like to do galas is I think there's a little bit of a misperception of galas just being really rich people in really nice clothes, and all they do is talk about and do rich people things. But I will tell you, any good event I have ever been to has a mix of people from all income backgrounds, all aspects of society, because I've never been to a fun party where everyone's exactly the same. Those parties are the ones that I'll be there for 20 minutes and I leave. They're not
Yep.
the ones that I'll stay at for longer periods of time. Part of it is I never grew up going to any galas. So I kind of had to check that at the door when I went to my very first one. And I realized that, it's a much bigger segment and subset of a community than I ever would have realized unless I had
Yeah.
actually walked into that room for the first time.
Yeah, and I love how accepted, or I mean, even desired, that the nonprofit gala has become, especially in in society here in New York on Long Island. Like it's the thing, and like people are in this type of season, and they're getting invited to a lot of events. They're really looking forward to the fun ones, not so much kind of the boring ones. But I do love how it's really starting to fit into the space that this is the thing to do, in many different generations as well. Like we're starting to see millennials attend galas and participate in the fundraising, which I love, and then millennials being a part of the team. So, like, I guess when you were saying it's that broad spectrum of donors that really kind of makes that event, the great, kind of greater. What are some other things that can really stand out, that a nonprofit could do beyond having that diverse audience?
So I would say, you want to make sure that you have, some sort of theme and or entertainment, but there's got to be some sort of pull that draws people into the event and wants them to be involved. And I always like to say, and because I've been doing this long enough now, the events that were the most popular 13, 15 years ago are not the most popular today. And there's brand new organizations that are now the most popular, at least in Texas. And, Texas is a place where a lot of people have come in over the last 15 years. So
Mhm.
the cities are very dynamic, and the mix is constantly changing of people because of all the inbound stuff. So, to kind of be able to see kind of what kind of see the cities evolve and change, and kind of you can kind of see it in a lot of ways through the
Yeah.
galas that are run.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's really exciting for me, to see galas that are just continue to be upscaled. They continue to improve that donor experience, that's there, and then there's these elements that they're utilizing to surprise people and really delight them, and be like, wow, we would have never thought that we would ever seen this at a nonprofit gala. So it's fun how you said they get to evolve these, and new ideas get to come in, and those are the ones that could be the most awesome galas here this year, next year, and many years beyond.
Absolutely. And I always like to say, and this may not be kosher with some people in the audience, but my rule of thumb is that no one should be on every single one of someone's party list ever, not even your own spouse. I mean, do you really want to go to your spouse's high school or college buddy weekend? No, absolutely not. Keep them off the list. I don't. So, my whole thing is, and I think that's kind of where some people get stuck, and some people, you can kind of tell if someone really gets upset by something like that, they never really cared about the cause in the first place.
Right.
So, and that's at least my experience with it,
Mhm.
and there have been times where I've been left off lists, and then I get this, profusely apologetic note from someone with the organization. I'm like, I attend it for a living. If I've gone 7 times in a row, if
Yeah.
you forgot to invite me once, I'm just thinking, you know what, you're giving me a year off, and thank you. Not you don't need to say I'm
Okay.
sorry, but as nice as that is, it's okay to not. And one of the things about organizations that have staying power with their galas is their guest list constantly evolve. So it's not
Yes.
the same exact people every single year going
Right.
to those things. And one of my
Right.
favorite things to do at any gala is walk in, and I'm like, I never knew this person supported an arts charity because I've only ever seen them at children's charities.
Okay.
And it's fun because, especially if you know people socially,
Mhm.
galas are a good way to kind of realize, oh, okay, this is a whole new dimension. What compelled them? What about art drew them here?
Right.
Now it could be that their best friend dragged them there, but usually I found, especially since COVID, that's not enough. There has to be some sort of I want to be here-ness that, people
Yeah.
definitely are more selective now than they were
Yep.
5 years ago with attending things. So if they're there now, you can really just go up to somebody and ask, what about the arts, intrigues you, if you really only know them from going to, children's galas or children's fundraisers.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I'm seeing that. I mean, there's a little bit of quid pro quo going on with associates and friends. That's like, I'll go to your gala if you come to my gala. But well, you're right. It's that affinity, that individuals are starting to make that connection with the organization's events that they're attending. And if they're not into it, we don't want them in the room anyways. It's like they're on obligation. They're not wanting to be there to learn a bit more about this organization, or wanting to be there to learn more about how they can help. So Rob, as let's kind of go through the like you were a guest at so many galas, and like you had just said, you walk into the event and you see all of these other guests that are there. Let's talk about being a good guest at these events, like how to like or how you would say how to help the nonprofit have a great event, as kind of from that guest perception.
So one is you have to look like you want to be there. I can tell from a million miles away, and usually it's husbands dragged there by their wives. But I
Yep.
can tell when people don't want to be there. But sometimes it's not that, and sometimes a couple may have had a fight before. But when you're in a room in a space where it's about helping people that are less fortunate than you,
Hmm.
you've got to be able to check that at the door. So first and foremost, you have to want to be there to be a good guest. And if you don't want to be there, put on a game face, because to me, there's nothing more uplifting for the soul than, being in a space with a bunch of other people that want to make the city where you live, the state where you live, the country you live, the universe you live in better.
Yeah.
So that's for, that I would say that is for, first and foremost.
Okay.
Second is one of the things you know, that I do is I make sure that I have a very good, relationship with all the event photographers, because in each of the cities, it tends to be the same 6 or 7. In a major market. In a smaller market,
Yeah.
it's probably 2 or 3. It's the same segment of photographers. And what I will always do is I make sure to get photographed by the photographer, so that if I don't see anybody from the organization there, they will see that I was there. They'll see that, I dressed nicely, I came to
Yeah.
play, and
Yeah.
I've done my part in being a good guest. Because,
Yeah.
it's when you're in a room with 500 people, and I'm on duty, so I'm trying to seek out the nonprofit, people to, congratulate them on the evening. And I'll say probably 25 to 30% of the time, I don't get to see them because, I'm busy, they're busy, and we just don't wind up ever seeing one another.
Yeah.
So that's one of those things that I'll do. And I don't like to walk red carpets. I'll do it every
Okay.
once in a while, but I don't like to do the step and repeats. I'll find the photographer that's out doing candid and ambiance shots, because that
Yeah.
way they can kind of see you mingling within the crowd. So, if there's, like I can think of, a gala that I was at recently, and it was one of kind of the leading philanthropists that are kind of in their late 60s or early 70s, a youngish couple, and me and my husband. And the photographer came over and was like, I need a photo of all of you. So we were candid in the audience as opposed to on the step and repeat. So
Yeah.
you're showing yourself mingling. And,
Yes.
organizations like when people are mixing with other people, and you've got people in
Yeah.
wide age ranges in a photo, it's like, okay, these people have something in common. What they have in common, I don't know. But if you're a good development
Well,
professional, you're gonna go find out.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And there's those that, and I'm not saying a lot of people do this, but there is those people that do, show up at the event, get the photo on the red carpet, and then are like, okay, I'm out, kind of thing. They'll
Yeah.
come in, mingle for a little bit, and then, and then end up gala hopping or whatever it is. But then it's more of that focus on them, like, hey, look at me, I'm a good person. And then we know you're a good person, but it kind of becomes that. Whereas, like you said, it's more than that. Is being a good guest. You're there. You're excited to be there, and you're excited to have these photographs that you can then share. Which is like I talk about so many different ways that givers can give at events, and sharing those photographs after the event, makes that awareness happen there. So I think that that's a fantastic tip.
Absolutely. And like, when we, because obviously that's what most of my Instagram is posting at those. But what I will say is that it's when my husband and myself are in images, there may be one of just the two of us. It's almost always the other people, and we tag the other people so that it feels like a community event, because that's really what's
Wow.
important. It's not about you. It's about the organization. It's about the community. It's about the people that who have done good work. It's about your friends too, because these
Yeah.
people, when you've been doing it for a long enough time, they're your friends, and you can go out with them for coffee and other things like that as well.
So let's kind of talk about this cocktail. hour time, and again, being a good guest, getting out there, mixing, mingling, like, are there things that a good guest could do during that time?
So there's a lot of different ways that you can go about doing this. So to
Mhm.
me, when I first started going to galas, because I'm more of an introverted extrovert, God, I mean, cocktail hour scared me to death. I could not wait to get seated at a table. And then I would say about 18 months to like about 3 years, I'm going to kind of go like through the growing up process. I was
Right.
kind of in that, okay, these cocktail parties are fun, but I'm glad to sit down. Now, after having gone to it long enough, I love cocktail hour, but when I'm seated at a meal, it's almost kind of like an anchor because I know that there's so many other
Seatbelt.
people that I did not get to see that I
Yep.
want to see. So if I see them from across the room, I'll get up and I'll go talk to them, if there's a pause in the program or whatnot. So, what I will say is when you first go, obviously it's easier to go with a friend or go with your spouse or go with,
Yep.
your significant other. Definitely do that so you have safety in numbers. Second is if you're going to an organization, I always like to say be involved in it, be involved in that fundraising event in some way, because that way you've got a built in group of people that you already know. Even if you only know them casually, you can go up and say hello to them, even if they're talking to somebody else. If they're a good guest as well, they're going to introduce that person they're talking to you. And it's a good way to just naturally start to meet people. The other thing that I like to do is if lots of times at cocktail hour, bar lines can get kind of rather long. So
Yeah.
what I will do if I don't know anybody, I'll find kind of a longish line and then talk to the person. One, it gives you a little bit of a pause. If you don't want to talk to anybody, you don't have to for a moment. But
Right.
two,
Right. Right.
you can talk to the person and strike up a conversation with the person in front of you or behind you and talk to them as well. So, and it's an organic way because obviously you're sitting there. And if you're at a gala, you need to be social. And especially if you're at a hotel, a lot of times cell phone signals don't work. So you really can't even look into your phone in a lot of cases. So this way you can kind of strike up just conversations. And to me, those tend to be people that I don't know, and they don't tend to be
Yeah.
like these long lasting conversations. But it's a good way to brush up on your conversation skills and just learn a little bit about something, learn why what brought them to this event, why they support that organization, or who they're there with. And it's a really good way to kind of brush up on those social skills. The other thing that I like to do is kind of arrive on an early-ish side, especially
Okay.
if you're newer because if you've got a lot of social anxiety and you're in that, I mean, that's like being thrown into the deep end without a life jacket. If you get there before it gets too crowded, you have it allows you to kind of more ease into the pool instead of just jumping in a cannonball into the deep end. It's kind of like sliding down those steps in the shallow end of
Yeah,
the
you're kind of
pool.
like,
It
yeah,
just
yeah,
kind of
yeah. You kind of
allows
getting
you to
those toes
just
wet.
ease right in there. Exactly. Exactly. So those are all really good ways to just kind of think about, during the cocktail party and the cocktail party process of,
Mhm.
how to go about doing it. And again, find that photographer. And I will say for any organization, that is a line item you must have because not
Yes.
only do you get to showcase the people at your organization, the people supporting your organization, it is also marketing that you can use for next year's gala. And quite frankly, the ones who have really good galas, you'll see it in marketing promotional materials, certain
Yeah.
social photos all year round and all kinds of different things that they do.
Absolutely.
It really
Absolutely.
is such an incredible asset because people are naturally drawn to other people. And if
Yeah.
they see, if they see who's, if they see who's there in the marketing materials, it's going to make them more compelled to go.
So in the cocktail hour, you have these like different fundraising things, like the raffles and the silent auctions and the champagne things and the signature drink and buy this mystery box and all of those things. Like, do you have a favorite? You're like when you see an organization doing this, you're like, oh, they really kind of thought about this activation or this fundraising element in the cocktail hour.
So there is one that I like in particular. It's called it's and I don't know how specific this is to Austin, but it's called Typewriter Rodeo. So
Ooh,
basically
tell us more.
you give actually hold that thought right there.
Okay, holding. All right. So as Rob's grabbing whatever he's grabbing, I've never heard of this type. So
So
I've never typewriter
basically,
rodeo. All right, tell me more.
so I got this at a gala. So, and the guy named Sean is like my favorite guy, and I've got like 5 or 6 of these. So
Okay,
basically, what it is that you give a phrase, and then they just from that phrase they type a poem.
okay,
So it's slower. So it's not one of those things like you're going to have 3 people, and not everyone's going to get to do it. But again, if you're one of those more introverted people and you're afraid to socialize, if you can get something really fun and experiential about this, about the event, you get a good tangible takeaway. And it was like, you were there, you did it, and especially if you're more of an introvert, you're proud of yourself that you stuck it through. So I
gotcha.
like that just because you can give a phrase and then they write this is a 4 stanza, 4 line poem. So it's 16 lines. Probably takes them about, I'd say 2 to 3 minutes to type. And
Right.
you walk away with this really good, fun little experience.
Yeah. So and then that's similar to a photo booth, or something like that. Like you have that takeaway. But I love the takeaway that it was a piece of art. It's created. Did they weave any mission or anything, kind of a theme of the night within that?
Usually they don't. It just depends on what the topic was. Like if I
Gotcha.
said, the theme of the event, they probably throw it in there. Mine
Okay.
was literally the title of this one is The Dinner Party Host. So he
Okay.
he didn't throw it in, but I've known this guy for a long time, so he kind of knows, I guess, what I would what I would want to expect and what makes me
Hmm.
laugh or smile. So um they can do that. They don't necessarily always. It really just kind of
Oh, okay.
depends on,
Okay.
depends
Just
on
curious.
the event, and really it's all about the topic you give them, the phrase that you give
Got
them.
it. Got it. So now, are you making a donation for that? Is that something that they charge for? Or is that just like kind of a free thing that happens?
That's a free activation.
Okay. Okay, so the free activation,
So
that's great, and organizations need to have those, right? Because that's the
they
something to do
do.
for everybody. And then so let's kinda talk about the pay to play, I guess, then you're kinda in that fundraising element. Like, are you seeing things that you're like, "Yes, that's good," or like, I don't know, for us, we're kinda seeing the silent auction get played out a little bit, or it's getting smaller? I don't know, thoughts on the fundraising
So
in the cocktail hour?
So silent auctions are a really tricky thing. What I will say is I know some organizations that do it really, 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 really well. And what they
Mhm.
do is they package and then they curate the package. So
Yes.
just because an organization wants to donate doesn't mean it's the right fit for that event. And
Right.
it's not even that you're saying no, it's, you may not be right to donate for the gala, but I kind of have this more community focused grassroots event, and
Mhm.
it'd be a much better fit for us to donate here. So you don't necessarily want to say no, but you also,
Mhm.
because if an organization is giving, if a business is giving their time, money, service, whatever it is, you want to make sure that they're going to get the best return out of it as well. So you don't just
Right.
take it for the sake of taking it.
And just throw it out there.
And
Be like, "Hope we raise some money with it."
Absolutely. And the ones that, are able to kind of package kind of luxurious stuff in kind of a bigger package are able to get really, they're able to get good and decent returns on their signature fundraisers. One that I can think of that does it really well is the Children's Museum in Houston always has this really just amazing live auction full of, it's a mix of experiences, and they're anything from local to trips. So it can be a restaurant package, or it can be kind of a couple weekend getaways somewhere, but they're all packaged together and they're all presented really well and really elegantly that it makes you want to bid. And that's the thing. And the other thing too is, and the challenge with silent auctions is, especially now, is because they're all tied to your phone and you get alerts, people don't necessarily focus as much at the gala than they would have 5 or 10 years ago, when that was less of a thing. It was like
Eh,
2014, 15, 16 was when a lot of organizations started that
yes.
conversion. Now that
Yep.
COVID's done, they're all doing it. And even before COVID, not everyone was doing it. Now everyone's doing it. So there
Oh,
is
so
a little bit more of an ADD factor with that.
okay, so I mean, this is a great point to talk about. Yes, the mobile phone is at our hips all the time. It's a great
Mhm.
tool, but then like you said, it offers a distraction opportunity, or a way to kind of disconnect. Like you said earlier, that when you're standing in the bar line and you're making new friends, sometimes the cell service is bad, so that cell phone can stay in your pocket and you can actually connect to real humans, which is such a novel idea in events.
I know how 1980.
Oh my God, yeah, talk to people. What? And that's a kind of the conversation. Now we're kind of evolving now into the kind of the programmatic kind of form, like ballroom doors open. Let's head inside. Now, as the actual programmer kind of gala is happening, how do you be a good guest there?
So, it take, getting people into a ballroom, it literally is like herding cattle, and not even like well-behaved cattle. It's like feral cattle you have to like herd into a room. So
So we're not the only
it
ones that
takes a
experience that.
while to get there. And this is probably the one place where I could probably improve. I'm always one of the last to be seated just because I've been going to these for so long that,
Come on,
it's difficult to
Rob.
go
Let's
more than
go. Go sit
5 feet.
down.
It's just difficult to go more than 5 feet without running into somebody, especially if you haven't seen them.
Right.
Especially coming out of the pandemic, some people you haven't seen in 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're running into these people and you're talking. And it just takes, it takes a while. It takes a
Yeah.
while to get there. Now with me, because there are a lot of instances where I'm going to 2 things in a night. I'll usually state that so that either. For me, if they, be honest and transparent, like if you've got to leave earlier, if the person's table you're at is in the back of the room, that's probably going to be a little bit easier to get away with than if you're in the front of the room where,
Yes.
and that's why I always will say, and that's the thing about being a good guest is set the expectations of what, now with me, it's a little bit different because I'm not usually going to just one thing in a night. I'll be
Right.
going to
You're gala
multiple
hopping.
things.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so for me, it's, that way they know, seat me in the, towards the back so that I can just make a graceful exit so that I can go on to the next thing. And it's less disruptive, especially if a live auction's going on or,
True.
it's in the middle of a really emotional program tribute or whatever it is. You don't see me and my husband's, heads blocking,
Right. I
blocking the
gotcha.
entire room and the monitors doing that. So,
Okay, so as
but
a kind of as a guest, I guess the tip that you're giving is like go sit down.
go sit down. Go sit down eventually. But I mean,
Eventually.
so long as you're seated before they start the program, you're
Right.
kind of in good
Yeah.
shape. But I
Yeah.
would, just say, one thing that I do is I will introduce myself to every person at my
Yeah.
table. Even if I don't talk to them again, or anything, it's just a way to introduce yourself and ingratiate yourself with everyone else at the table.
I love that.
So
And
it creates a communal feeling from the second that you arrive, and it makes it easier too when that way you're not just stuck talking to your spouse the whole time. You can actually look in
right.
the other direction and talk to the person on the other side of you.
Yeah. Yeah. And so then, you say you're sitting down, you make new friends. I mean, that's kind of part of that is that communal feeling. And then like you just said, like, you don't want to be that disruption if the emotional program is happening or the live fundraising is happening. I think that's another good tip too, is follow, kind of pay attention to that program. And it's kind of like attending a Broadway show. When it's time to cheer and time to clap, like do that, like get excited about that.
Yes.
But if it's like the video's on screen and like this is an emotional moment or we're doing some fundraising, like take a cue around and just
Yeah.
we can hold our conversation for just a couple minutes.
Absolutely. And that can be hard to do, and again it kind of depends on the event. I will say,
Yeah.
I'm lucky to live in a city in Austin where we have a disproportionate number of galas that are outdoors, and
Ooh, okay.
it's easier to, let's just say it's easier to continue conversations than when you're in a room and the voices
Mhm.
echo.
Okay.
When you're
Okay.
outside, you get a little bit more. So Austinites are extremely well behaved, but I would say that that's probably the one thing is they have to shush people up because we go to so many things outside to where the program goes. You can hear whoever's talking, but you can still have a conversation. That's much harder to do when you're indoors.
So the shush is a very important thing that I talk with my clients about because I don't ever shush people as the MC or as the fundraiser because I don't want to be the kind of that jerk that's like shh shut up, and a lot of times
Yeah.
he'll be like, shush them. And I'm like, well, wait, there's better, more effective ways that we can capture their attention besides shushing them. And I actually broke my own rule the other night, and it was a giant just room full of some amazing private school parents and friends and whatnot. And they were like active, and they were, I wouldn't say not well behaved, but they
They
weren't
were
doing
raucous.
bad.
We'll call them
Yeah.
raucous.
Yeah, they were in it. I was getting ready to start the program, and we were getting ready to have one of our emotional speakers come up, and we had to capture the attention. So I have a tactic now to where it's like, friends, if you can hear me, look to your friend to the left and go, and then they would do that. Okay, now let's look to the friend to the right and go. And then eventually they all quieted down, but it was kind of more of a fun, kind of funny way to engage the crowd within that, instead of me being the guy like, shh, quiet, shh, quiet. Like, nah, we don't
Yeah.
listen to that guy.
I like that approach though of, just do it on one side and the other. I really like that. I haven't
Yeah,
seen
yeah.
that
Well,
here,
there's a little.
so I may have to bring that up to some folks, the next time I talk to them.
All right. Well, tell him you learned it from Heart of the Gala podcast.
I will, absolutely. From Bobby D. Absolutely.
Yeah. So speaking of programs, kind of emotional videos or speakers, or whatnot, as that gala guest from that perception, like, is a longer video okay? Is someone that goes on for 20 minutes okay? Or what, as a guest, what do you prefer to see? Or as a guest, like, what touches your heart the most effectively? I think that's probably the best question.
I think any testimonial needs to be succinct and emotional at the same time. So I
Okay.
don't really think videos should be, unless you're honoring somebody, they really
Hmm.
should be kind of at 3 minutes. And again, a
Okay.
lot of that's just because of the social TikTok area that we're in, that, people just, they only have a finite attention span. So you've
Right.
really got to kind of adapt that into your programming and really make sure that you're doing stuff that's going to hold the audience, because if it goes on too long, it you're going to lose the room and it loses its impact. Because I really do believe videos, they're a way to get people to give a lot of money, but I also think you can run the risk of having diminishing returns if you
Yeah.
either do too many of them or they run too long. You can state a lot in 180 seconds. It may feel daunting, but you can do that. And if you've got
Right.
a couple of really good stories, just split them throughout the evening. So do a 3 minute one
Okay.
maybe right before you eat, and do a 3 minute one after you eat that maybe tees up a live auction, as an
Okay.
example.
Okay. Okay. Great. So now moving into live fundraising, moving into auctions, paddle raises, my favorite part. What are some things that you're seeing that you really like within, like, again, coming from the guest perspective? Which, again, I love your perspective. I'm learning so many things here. I'm like, oh, this is so cool, because now I get to kind of see it through your eyes, of that. So now from your eyes at the table, eating the meal, heard the testimonials. Now it's time for fundraising. Like, what are you seeing that's working?
So I really like Paddles Up as a mechanism to raising money. The reason is people really, especially coming out of COVID, people want to see where their money goes. And a Paddles Up, you can specifically say this amount funds X. Now you
Okay.
can do that on a standard live auction item, like if it's a trip or something. It's just much harder to do, and people are focused on the trip. They're not necessarily focused on,
Right.
how
Right.
many people am I helping. The
Right.
Paddles Up really gives you the ability to say, if you give $5,000, it will do 30 intakes for abused children or whatever it is. it,
Mhm.
it gives something that they can quantify and compels them to give. The
Okay.
other thing that I would say about Paddles Up is, and I've seen quite a few organizations do this over the years, don't go for the home run amount unless there is a plant in the audience
Okay.
that will do it.
You mean I shouldn't ask for a
Because
million? Anybody?
never.
Anybody?
Unless someone's there. But
All
like
right.
you'll see someone do 50 and no one does it.
Right.
But then you'll have 25 and there's three. But if you started with 25 and there was three, you actually might get four or five, and you get that 50 anyway.
Yeah.
So, don't just swinging for the fences for that moment
Yeah.
isn't, you know, people are like, oh, well, that's a real wow moment. And it's like, it could be, but it's about raising the amount of money necessary and hitting your fundraising goal. And if you can start
Yes.
with a lower amount and get more people to do it,
Right.
you're going to get much further. And also that shortens, because I will say the one thing about funding needs is I just think below $1,000 that I have never been in a live auction room where the audience is not lost after you get to the $1,000 point. Like, because usually the paddle's ups at the end and everyone's kind of checked out. To me, at that point, it's, because everyone's got a QR code now, it's just scan and give what you feel is necessary or give what you feel is important, because someone may only want to give 750. So if you do
Right.
500, you're leaving $250 on the table and you're saving probably 5 minutes of your program
Hmm.
to do that. So with
Okay.
those, because that's money at the margins, that's not
Yep.
going to get you to your fundraising goal. But that way people can give what they want to give. They can do it anonymously. And some people may be embarrassed after seeing 50, 25, 10, 5,000. They may be embarrassed to raise their paddle to give
Right.
$500. This way
Right.
they
Right.
get to do it and not feel any shame towards it, because they're like, oh my God, someone gave 100 times as much as I did.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
it's keeping those things, and that allows the guests to feel more welcome. And it allows them to feel in a way, to give in a way that's comfortable for them. And also, a lot of
Right.
people like to give a little bit anonymously. I know of
Yes.
organizations where they scan the QR code and someone will give $5,000. They just didn't want to
Yeah.
raise their paddle
Right.
and show it
And
to the room.
so that's very commonplace that you'll have I like to call them humble givers that do like to make those contributions and will do go on the QR code, but then those that are out there, I mean, you're seeing this happening, so like below the $1,000 level, and they say, here, grab the QR code, make a donation. Guests are doing that.
Yeah, they are.
Okay.
And they are. And really, because like I even counted, like when I'm like, okay, how much does this under thousand? And this was like a gala that raised
Mhm.
$1 million. And it
Wow.
was like 2250. And it was like, you'll find 5 or 6 people that will
Hmm.
scan their QR code and give a few $100. Cause you got to think about it. If you've got 500 people in a room, you're basically
Right.
asking for 1% of the people to do it to get to that amount. So it's really
Yeah.
not, again, it becomes kind of a game of math at that point, and it
Hmm.
allows the program to kind of flow and continue on and go on to the next thing. And like I said, below $1,000 is when the room tends to get lost. It allows the room to kind of remain focused, and you can go on to the next thing if you've got other things that you want to do.
Got it. Okay, so let's kind of talk about those other things. Live auctions, what makes a live auction great in your eyes?
So it's got to have a mix of experiences that
Hmm.
connects with the audience. I am a big fan of plants. So, make sure that if you're agreeing to do a live auction item, that you've got 1 or 2 donors that want to have, preferably two, that way it raises the bidding, but that you've
Okay.
got a couple of donors that will be interested in that item, whether they have a table or they're going to bring a guest who, they know that it would be perfect for them.
Okay.
So,
Okay. So that there's
and that's kind of where.
so they're bidding. There is
Absolutely. And
bidding.
that's kind of where, yeah, and that's kind of where social media is important, especially if you're doing a trip and you know that a certain family who gives may go to the same resort or island or area every year. Oh, they might really like that. Let me take it to them, and they get a tax deduction. So,
Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
it's.
It sounds kind of creepy. You mean they're going on to the donors' social media and like looking at where they like? They're like this play. These people love to go
No, I'm not
to
saying
Puerto
like
Rico.
I'm not, no, I'm not saying likes. I'm saying what they're posting. I'm not saying get
Okay.
creepy. I'm
Okay.
just saying if it's
Just
out there for the world, it's out there for the
fair
world. It's
game.
doing your research. And again, if they're a big enough donor and they've got a relationship with the organization, they're probably going to know that anyway, because at
Right.
least in Texas, the development people are very close to a lot of their major donors, so they know kind of what they're doing and all that. And
Mhm.
especially if they've previously chaired or served on a committee for that event, they're going to know some stuff about them, so they'll kind of know those things. They may already
Right.
know so and so goes to Cabo every year, and we know this package at the Four Seasons would go over really well with them. And it's just
Yeah.
kind of knowing, because part of it's knowing your donors, because you want
Yep.
to make sure that you're getting the most amount possible. So it's not just getting any expensive item, it's about getting the right expensive items that
Yes. Yes. I
are
think that
going to
that's
get a
important.
return. And then obviously working with an organization to make sure that as many items as possible can be sold twice.
Oh, okay. So that's not weird from your standpoint, because like, so let's say you're a bidder, you're a
No.
winner, and all of a sudden you're like, "Yay, I won!" And they're like, "Wait a minute, let's double the money," and we call this, the secret double sometimes. And then we go to the backup bidder and make that offer to them. So that like that's cool.
Oh, that's totally cool. I see it all the
Mhm.
time. I mean, I'll
Okay.
say there's rarely a live auction I go to where it doesn't happen at least once.
Okay. Yeah, and that's what we really try to encourage as well. Multi-sale opportunities. Whether it's a trip that was donated or a consignment trip. What you know what? Actually, that's a great question.
Absolutely.
So consignment, like as a guest, you purchase a trip to Cabo,
Hmm.
and then it was put together by what we call a consignment group or a vacation
Hmm.
organizer, whatnot. As a donor, what's the conception of consignment items used within live auctions?
That's a good question. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I know a lot of items, they kind of have like a base that so and so demands X amount, and a lot of those
Yeah,
organizations they may
kind of that,
demand a
yeah,
certain
minimum.
bar. I think it's okay. What I would say is if you've got plans, just be transparent with that
Okay.
and just let them know that, it's a consigned amount. And in some cases, they may actually want to give a little bit more, especially if they want to help the organization.
Okay.
But I really believe in that transparency is key. And to me, a live auction, it's being worked a lot behind the scenes
Yeah.
before the night of the actual auction.
Oh yeah.
It's
A lot.
got to be worked. It's not 500 people walk in and let's raise 100, 200, $500,000. That's not how it works.
Wait, you
There
mean
is
there's
so
no magic
much.
pill? You have to do the homework?
You have to actually do work, Bobby. Can you believe it?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so then I love this kind of this perception again. I'm like again I'm taking notes like crazy. You might be able to hear me typing. I'm like this is gold. So then how much influence does a auctioneer have on the event, on the room, on the kind of that energy that's there? Now, auctioneer, we kind of have two types. You have the professional, me, and then you have the non-professional. So can an auctioneer affect the event at all?
Oh, absolutely. And I'll say, I'm lucky to live in a state where I get to go to three or four cities on a really consistent basis.
Right.
And the way that live auctions are done in Austin is very, very, very different from how they're done in Houston and Dallas. Like in
Really?
Austin, I mean, I would say there's probably no city in the United States per capita that's probably raising more in live auction money than Austin. It's
Yeah.
just, and again, Austin is a city that it's a city from the heart. Dallas brings the wow and Houston brings the fun. That's always kind of like what I like to say about
Okay.
those three cities. But because of that, the auctioneers, auctioneers are able to read the room and see where the emotions lie. And if they're, the auctioneers may be walking around the room and kind of seeing, who's crying during this, who's shedding tears during this testimonial, or when this person spoke, or whatever it is, so that they kind of understand, these people who are now in Austin. There's a lot of people who are local here. They kind of
Yeah.
know who gives to what just because they're able to kind of see. And I would say, follow platforms like mine, and that's really kind of where I think one of our big benefits is that you see who's going to what. And that's kind of why the social pictures, for us are incredibly important, is we want to celebrate those people who do give in big ways, back to their
Yeah.
community. So it's making sure to do those things, and just making sure that the research has been done on that audience, and that if you're an organization and someone's coming in from another town, you know giving kind of a dossier to the auctioneer of
I
these are
love
the
it when they
people
do
who are
that.
the plants, and this is what you need to know about them. Then that way, even if you're new in from another market, you can just say, I know you gave to this. I know you gave to that. Like I know one socialite who's done auctions at our home who will say, you just sold your company and your anniversary is in 2 weeks. You need to buy this. Now that's an exception rather than a rule. But
Yeah.
I've seen it all when it comes to auctions. But I mean, that's a hoop. But and not everyone can get away with that. But
Right.
it's important that the organization knows who they are, because it's really any successful gala. You are in concert. You are in concert with the event producer. You are in concert with the caterer. You are in concert with the auctioneer. You're in concert with the photographer. You've got to be in concert with everybody, and they've got to be active partners in order for your gala to
Mm.
be successful. Every single one of those elements is critical to success. And good nonprofits know that, and they find partnerships that they can grow and sustain with the right people year after year.
Oh my gosh. Amen, my brother. I love that. So, okay, so now here we're going to talk about that celebration. So now post fundraising, post testimonials, after cocktail hour, now we're at the end of the event, the dessert's happening. Like a band, a singer, a DJ, do we have to dance? Do they have to have the after party? Like let's just chat real quick on that, like kind of like after fundraising, the celebrating.
You have to kind of read your audience. And after parties to me are one of those things where you've really got to listen to your donors, especially if you've got an organization where the donor base may be a little bit older. They may
Mhm.
not care or even want that. And that's
Okay.
okay. Just put those great experiences, on the front end of the evening. I am a
Mhm.
big fan of, one of the things that we're lucky about in Texas is you get to see a lot of really great performers
Yeah.
perform at all kinds of things,
Yeah.
you know, like Kristen Chenoweth will sing at stuff, Vanessa Williams will sing at stuff. Garth Brooks performed at a gala last year. Shania Twain just performed a couple weeks ago at the Cattle
Wow.
Barons Ball 50th anniversary at South Fork. You
I saw
can
that.
really see, you can really see some of these. And, I actually had them on as a guest on my own podcast to talk about the process of, working, and it took months for them to do that. It's not something celebrities and musical performers just don't fall out of the sky. But what I will say is the celebrity is only going to say yes, though, if they're tied to the organization and what the cause is in some way, shape, or form.
Okay, so let's talk about this celebrity now. There's some misconception that's out there that if you're going to have a gala, you've got to have some celebrity, or if you have a gala and you get a celebrity, you're going to raise more money. Let's kind of about that. Talk about that celebrity variable.
That's absolutely not true. And, it's for a couple of reasons. One is the celebrity has to be tied to the cause in order for it to be effective. Like
Okay.
I know of a gala, and, again, it's not in my market, it was not even in the Texas market, it was somewhere else in the country. And they were talking about how they got this very household name sports celebrity to show up. And the gala raised $65,000. And when I found out what the name of the charity was, it really had nothing to do with this person. And
Oh,
it was
okay.
like, you got this person just for the sake of their name. And a
Just the
name is
name. Yeah.
important, but a name is important if you understand what that person's currency is. So, like, if you're in your
Okay.
own community and you want to get an honorary chair of someone who's chaired stuff for 25 years and they're just, they just want to lend their name to get tables sold,
Right.
you understand that, and that person's going to bring that. But if it's just this celebrity who doesn't really have a tie to the community or anything, that's not going to work, and it's not going to draw people in, and it's not going to compel them to give. And what you wind up with are people that pay $50 for a ticket to snap a selfie to say that they met this person, which is great, but it's not
Right.
getting you, no celebrity should walk into a room and only raise five figures for a gala. And that's what happened in this instance.
Ooh,
It
ouch.
didn't
Okay.
even hit $100,000. So, it's really important that the celebrity is tied to the mission of the organization in some way. And that you as a nonprofit and you as a host, an event committee, and you as a gala chair are working that because it makes sense from an organic fit. So the chair should agree with the nonprofit, should agree with the committee that this is the right person to be there.
Right, right. And that is common all the time that like we need to get, so and so and so and so to come in here. And especially here in New York City, we do get that a lot. I mean, there's a ton of performers that just pop up at galas all the
Yeah.
time. And there's been times, I've shared the stage with some, really, really awesome, just like passionate actors or singers or performers that are into that cause and then are into that cause. You're right. That passion then radiates throughout the room. They can hear it you can hear it in your voice. But I've also have shared the stage with celebrities that it was that obligation. Maybe they got paid to be there, but they didn't have that connection, and they were just kind of
Yeah.
like happy to be here. That's important to have
Absolutely.
that.
And again, and a lot of celebrities are paid to go, and musical performances are.
Mhm.
Like I
Yeah.
remember it was a couple years ago, Kristen Chenoweth went to the Holocaust Museum Gala in Houston, and she was
Mm.
so moved by the program that she literally gave back her fee, and she announced it at the end of the program that I'm giving back my fee to this organization.
Wow.
So, if you can even get instances where people can actually, the organization can speak to a celebrity so much that it's not even about the money anymore. Because most
Right.
of those celebrities, they're going to be paid something,
Yeah.
especially when they're at that level to be there. Because they've
Right.
got their instrumentalists that they want to work with, their hair and makeup people they want to work with,
Yep.
transportation. A lot of times they want to fly privately. There's all those things that kind of go into that.
hmm Yeah, yeah, wow, yeah, and it's is the celebrity I think has to lend that feeling to that kind of that provenance to that event help raise it up to that level, but they have to have the connection. They've got to do that. All right, all right.
They absolutely have to. There's no other way around that.
Okay. Okay. So now you've had a great time at the gala. This has been such a good time. You go home, you kind of sleep off the hangover, and you made a donation, something like that. Like as a guest, how do you like to be thanked by these organizations? How do you like to, you see that your gift is doing something?
So, there's several different ways to do this. There's letters, obviously, there's emails, obviously. I think, if it's above a certain dollar amount, you deserve a phone call. I would say if
Mhm.
it's depending on how large your event is, if an individual is giving $2,500 or more, you owe it not only to them, but you owe it to yourself as an organization. Because
Mhm.
I will see Austin really has this wonderful thing called I Live Here, I Give Here. And they do this, it's
Ooh,
kind of their own Giving Tuesday in Austin called Amplify Austin. And it raises like $10 million in a day. So, and it's, all online contributions from throughout the
yeah.
city. And I know plenty of organizations that have gotten major donors out of it because their friend is majorly tied to it and they may give $50 just to support their friend. So it's
Okay.
always important to be vetting who those people are, and
hmm
where they are in the community and what they're doing and what they're supporting and why they're supporting it. But I really
And
think
do the
it's
homework,
incumbent
do the
upon the
research.
organization to do that. Absolutely. And making sure that you're thanking all those people, and also the support people or people like myself, who are
hmm
providing coverage to get the word out, making sure that you're extending thanks, that really goes a long way, with me in terms of with the finite amount of room that I have to cover, as
hmm
to okay, this person understands everything. Because if they're doing it to me, I know they're doing it to probably most everybody, because I'm probably not going to be the first person they're thinking of. That just to me shows, okay, this organization really cares about the donors, they care about the cause, and they care about raising more money next year.
Oh, so if you're thanked appropriately, you'll have that kind of that feeling to be able to come back and maybe give a little bit more.
Absolutely. And in my podcast, it was like the first or second episode I did. The person, she was the executive director for the Texas Cultural Trust. She said, people may not remember, the meal that you had, or the test, who cried during the testimony or the live auction item that was won, but you'll remember how they'll remember how they'll feel. And that's
Yes.
that's what the ultimate takeaway is when you're leaving an event, is how the person feels when they leave. And if they've
Mm,
got a good feeling, they're going to be much more inclined to come back. And then to be able to extend thanks as an organization after that really is like, it's like the cherry on top of the sundae.
ooh,
So it allows, it's that one additional little piece of information, little act of kindness that can really, really go a long way, because it just goes to show, okay, they are paying attention to
mhm,
details, and my money will be stewarded properly if they're
right.
taking the time to thank me in whatever way, shape, or form that works.
Builds that trust with the organization that they are going to do what they say with the money, and you're trusting them with your time and your dollars. When they attend their event, and when you get that thank you card in the mail or get that thank you phone call or that email or whatnot, it's like, oh, okay, great. They're doing what they say they can do, and then a few months down the road they could sell something else back, like, hey, because you raised your paddle at the event, we were now able to build this playground or be able to fund this many intakes or whatever it is, and then as the donor you're probably happy.
Absolutely, you're really
Yeah.
happy because you see where you see the good use your money is going towards, and it's not
Mm.
going to just overhead, and it's going specifically to a service to benefit the community you live in.
Right, right, right. All right, so let's do some plugs here. podcast. Tell me about this podcast. It's like I think I've got to have a new subscription that's happening right now.
Oh, fantastic. So it's called Fun and Fundraising. So I talk with people behind top nonprofit galas throughout the state of Texas. So, I recorded segments with the four largest nonprofit fundraisers in the state of Texas. I'm proud to say three of them have aired, and the fourth one will air shortly. So I'm really proud of being able to really tell the stories of these nonprofits in kind of a long form format. And it doesn't magically happen. And people are like, oh, it's Matthew McConaughey's gala, so people will just walk in and give $10 million. That's not how it works. There is
That's
so
not.
much that goes on behind it. It's not. And talking about celebrity, the thing is that he works that room. He knows every donor that's in there. He is not just walking in there, like a celebrity courtside at a basketball game. He is walking around the room and going all over the place to make sure that people are bidding the most amount of money possible. It's not just about getting them there and showing up. That's 90% of it. But what separates the 10% from the other 90 is the other 10% are those intangibles. And that's one of those intangibles that, you have to look in with that. And then I've also got my so basically you can find out wherever you get your podcast. It's called
Oh,
Fun and
I'm
Fundraising.
on it right now. Like I'm the newest subscriber.
Oh.
We're getting 5, but like friends, right here. I mean, the link will be in the bio and all the things below there. But I'm all about new perspectives. When fundraising, with fundraising events, and then like you say, for you, you're like, let's seek out these amazing fundraisers. What's working? How's this going? Like, what's making that magic happen? And some of that magic is having Matthew McConaughey at your event, work your room. Like that's a community
Oh no,
partnership right there.
that's his event. So
That's
although
his
he does
event.
show up
Yeah.
for some other stuff, that is his event. But he does show up for some other stuff. It's not like he
Yeah.
only does his event. He goes and shows
Right.
up for other things.
Right. Right.
And then I've
But
also
seems
got a
like he
platform. Oh
understands.
yeah, absolutely. And I've
Yeah.
also got a platform called Dining for Dollars where basically I teach people how to be, like we talked about at the top of the show, how to be good hosts and good guests. So I've got a new workshop coming out in mid-November called 12 Ways to Be a Great Party Guest. So basically it's a 2-hour interactive workshop over Zoom where you will learn kind of from start to finish how to be a good guest so that you get the ultimate goal, like what I talked about earlier, so that you get
Yeah.
invited back. The good guests are the ones that get invited back, and all good
Ooh.
hosts also know how to be a good guest. So if you're a good guest, a good host is going to see that. And anyone who has a really good party that everyone wants to be at, it's probably because the party host is good. It
Yep.
doesn't just happen. And I think, sometimes that's the perception. None of those things just happen. It happens out of, lots of strategic planning. And the website for that's diningfordollars.co.
All right. I'll have all the links below that you'll be able to find all this stuff. And I'm going to be at the seminar because I always want to be a better guest no matter where I'm going. So I'll be hanging out in there with you.
I really appreciate it. It's one of those things. It's like what I will say about it is it's like a muscle. And, someone asked me last spring, what has it been like coming back since COVID? And I was like, well, imagine that you ran marathons for a decade and you tore your ACL, and everyone kind of tore their ACLs with COVID. And, after you finished your rehab, you decided that very first run, you're going to run 17 miles. That's probably not going to work. It's a muscle that you've got to train. And,
Okay.
I had atrophy with it. Everyone kind of had atrophy with their social
Yeah.
muscles over COVID.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what the workshop's about. Is there's no judgment about you're an awful human being because you're not a good guest. That's not the case. A lot of it is that there's just atrophy and fatigue from
Mhm.
a couple of years of just not using those muscles and not, training them. It's like your social muscles are like any other muscle. If you don't use it, if you don't exercise it, it's going to get out of shape. And that's perfectly okay. But, now that things are back, you want to get back into shape.
That's right. It's not that you're, like you said, if you're a bad person, if you're a bad guest, it's just you can be better, and it's how you can be a better guest, whether it's a nonprofit function or a corporate function or a private function. Again, it's just being a better member of the society, a better member of the community that makes the great experiences. Right.
Absolutely. And when you're a good guest, it's just opportunities open up for you if you
Ooh.
are. Because if you
Ooh.
show up ready to play, people can sense that and people want to be drawn to you. So even if you're not the extrovert that is commanding attention in a room, people will still be drawn to you if you're doing those intangible things to be a good guest. And that's really ultimately what the workshop is about. It's finding the things that work for you. There is no one template. It's about understanding who you are as a personality and doing the things that you feel comfortable with, but also
Mhm.
challenge yourself a little bit with. It can't just be, all comfort. It's like, if you're doing the same exercise at a certain point, you're not going to get faster or get more muscles. You've got to kind of mix up the training a little bit. So you always want to
Yeah.
challenge yourself a little bit, but you want to make sure that the base is something that's familiar, that's going to get you, eased into the pool like we talked about earlier, instead of, jumping in with a cannonball, because that rarely goes well, because if you jump in with a cannonball, water gets up your nose, and
Yeah.
it's not
Or
a
other
pleasant
places.
experience for people. You want to slide in. It's much easier that way,
Yeah. All right. It's like I love all this information. This entire conversation has been so like I'm kind of a student of my own podcast, and it's very this is very how you say it's it's for me. Like I'm
Oh,
doing this for me. It's very selfish. Like I'm talking
yeah.
with you here for make me a better guest, a better consult, all of these things. But I think all of these just wonderful points of value that you shared in this entire conversation. I mean, I've taken like 5 pages of notes here, and I'll make sure I put those in the show notes. But so much value of how you can, as a guest, affect the outcome of a nonprofit gala.
Absolutely. It takes a village,
Yeah.
and you've got to do your part. Think of a gala as a village. You're a member of the town. How are
Hmm.
you, as a member of a town, going to make it a better experience for
Oh,
everybody and the space that you're in, and not just your little village, but the big village outside of that ballroom, which is what the
yeah.
nonprofit, which the nonprofit is helping
Yeah.
transform.
Yeah, or even that big village we all live on this big blue ball. Let's
Oh yeah.
we're all yeah, we're all here together, doing this. So Rob, thank you so much for spending some time with me. Thank you for being so open, so just willing to answer these questions that I've never got to ask anyone. So I'm super excited to have you here today. Thank you again.
Thank you, Bobby. It was a lot of fun, and I'm glad to be on as a guest anytime.
Right on. So, Rob, one last question. If my other half, Erin, was here, she would ask this, so I got to ask it on her behalf. Is there a book that you're reading right now that you're really enjoying, or is there a book that you might be able to recommend? Because I know there's a lot of us book junkies out there, and you are obviously a book junkie. For those that are listening online, he is in front of this just gorgeous bookcase full of so much knowledge.
So I have these friends, Quinn and Michael, who have this new book out called Classical Shindig. So they're based out of New Orleans, and it's really kind of about how to do kind of fun at home entertaining. And
Yeah.
that's really a good way to start, especially if you're overwhelmed and you may not be ready for a gala. Start with a dinner party, and start with
Okay.
something that's kind of smaller, so that you feel, again, it's like putting on training wheels before, you take them off. That's a really good way to do it. And they've got a really kind of, they've got a nice way of being traditional, but yet being relaxed at the same time, that, you learn all the good things through them in a fun way. So that's going to be my one shameless plug of somebody else for this episode.
Well, you gave me another book, so I love this. Awesome. Well, Rob, thank you again for being a guest. And listeners, please don't hesitate to reach out to Rob. He's on LinkedIn, very, very active on LinkedIn. You follow his Instagram. All the links are going to be below in the show notes. Don't forget about that workshop that he's got coming up, 12 Ways to Be a Great Guest. What's the date on those again?
The date is November 15th,
Okay, so November
12
15th.
o'clock
That's in my
Central,
calendar now. Yeah.
12
Hop
p.m.
on
Central,
and what's that again?
12 p.m. Central.
12 p.m. Okay, 12 p.m. Central. All right, we'll be there. And then don't forget to subscribe to the Fun and Fundraising podcast. Like that, awesome,
Absolutely. Apple,
super good.
Spotify, Google, which will be
Everywhere.
going away, but it'll eventually be YouTube. That will be exciting.
It is going to be exciting. Well, good. Well, thank you most of all to our listeners and our viewers that are watching. It's you that are out there that are making these events better, that are raising more money for this world that we're on. So thank you for spending some time with us here. Remember, just like Robin said, you got to subscribe, you got to like, you got to leave the reviews, do all those things, and follow us. Follow me, follow Rob, follow Aaron, follow everything, because it's just us putting that passion out there to help you have a better event. So, friends, thank you so much. Bobby D with Heart of the Gala. Keep going out there, being awesome, aspire to inspire, and just do better. All right. Thanks again, Rob. We'll see you.
Thanks, Bobby.